Good morning. How are you doing? It's nice to have you on board this morning. Welcome to Jobnet's Monday broadcast. I hope you have had a good weekend and you're all set and ready for another week. This week we move on to kind of looking and kind of investigating, preparing for interviews. So that's our main focus and our attention this morning. So we're going to be kind of diving into that. We've kind of built up some of the skills to get ourselves to interview already by looking at our CV and kind of prepping that, kind of thinking about who we are, what it is we're looking for, picking a spot. But we've also worked on our networking and our pitch to get ready for that. And they all wrap up together so that we're better prepared for interview. So today we're going to have a dig into that. This morning we've got the pleasure of having Michelle Canny join us from Public Jobs, the public appointment service, and they've been supporting us for quite some time. They always provide a great, thorough interview experience for anyone who gets to do a mock interview with them. But also they've got a wealth of job opportunities across many sectors and many areas of the country. So I'm going to ask Michelle to introduce herself now. Morning, Michelle. How are you?
Good morning. Very well, Rolly. It's great to be here.
Thanks very much. It's great to have you here.
Not at all. So my name is Michelle Canny. I work with the Public Appointment Service, as Rolly said. And I suppose what I'd like to do this morning is we'll certainly look at interviewing and hints and tips around interviewing, but maybe give you a time to reflect on, I suppose, the range and the variety of opportunities that are available across the civil and even wider public service. And we'll also sort of give you an indication as to what to expect in a selection process if you are going for a post in one of those areas. And we'll also spend, as I say, some time just looking at hints and tips around interviewing skills, things to look out for. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have as you arise. We can look at those towards the end. So,
can I just ask you a couple of questions, if that's okay, before we start?
Yes, do, of course.
So, how long have you been there, and what's your role?
Excellent. Okay, good questions. I'm a chartered work and organisational psychologist, so I'd be involved in, there's a team of us, the assessment services unit, and we work with the recruitment teams in designing recruitment and selection processes. We also do a lot of work around training interview board members, quality assuring the assessment processes. We design assessments and work with interview board members, so quite a wide remit within that. I'm with them over 20 years now, but I have had a period of time working with the health service executive in different functions, whether it's around recruitment and selection or looking at their leadership and management development strategies and different areas around there. So I suppose I have a lot of experience, whether it's on the recruitment or the assessment for development side of things. So happy to answer any questions that people may have for me today.
That's great. We'll as the questions come up, if they're appropriate to what you're asking, I might kind of jump in and ask them, and if not, we'll do a Q&A at the end.
Perfect.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Over to you to kind of run through your presentation. Thanks very much.
Super. Okay, so who are we then? The Public Appointment Service, or you might know us as well as publicjobs.ie. We're the central recruiter for the Irish civil and public service. So we recruit for a wide range of jobs at all levels across the services, and we would encourage you, if you haven't already, to register on publicjobs.ie, because you can get job alerts there. So you can go in and you can say, oh, I'm interested in this particular type of post, and then if a position or a vacancy arises there, you can get an email notification to prompt you that it's live and it's coming up. So I'd encourage you to take some time to look at that. Also on the Public Jobs website, you'll get links to people in different roles. So if you don't understand maybe what some of the roles are, looking at just the names, you can view videos of people working in the jobs, and they'll tell you a little bit more about it. So then, why might you like to consider a job in the civil service? Well, it does afford you an opportunity to get involved in significant projects that have a real impact on Irish society and culture. And you'll see that in a lot of the videos that people in jobs say, what do they like most about it? Well, it's the opportunity to make a difference. So people are very drawn to that. It is a dynamic, it's a challenging work environment, and with COVID, but even outside of COVID, like there's a good emphasis on continuous innovation, improvement, change, and doing things better. There's a lot of opportunities for progression within the grades. There's good work-life balance and a lot of sort of different flexible working hours and arrangements that you can avail of. And also strong support in terms of, learning and development opportunities. So there are online development programs, and outside of COVID, there's often in-classroom ones as well. There's also an opportunity to, I suppose, practice the transfer of your skills and get work experience across different functions or different departments. There are a number of mobility schemes that people can avail of. And as I said already, there is a strong emphasis on innovation, creativity and change. Strong emphasis on diversity and inclusion, and really would like to promote ourselves as an employer of choice, and try to facilitate people as best we can with reasonable accommodations, even ourselves in the context of the recruitment process. People are encouraged to share if they have any special needs or accommodations, and we facilitate those as best we can. Then across the different departments, there's an array of social clubs and different sort of staff network groups and all the rest of it. So there's loads of opportunity to, I suppose, feel involved and get involved. If you're an Irish speaker and you're interested in working with and through Irish, so then there's opportunities for you. And of course, with the civil and the wider public service, there's also the attractiveness of job security and the pension that goes with that. So a lot there to think about and to weigh up, certainly attractive facets to it. What we might do now is I just have a high level overview slide next, and it's really just to give you a sense for who it is that we recruit for. We do all the recruitment for the civil service, so whether it's entry level, clerical officer, right through to executive officer level, which would be the sort of first level management position within the civil service. Then we've an array of graduate and specialist posts. So if you are a graduate, we have open at the moment some graduate opportunities and some specialist streams. So I'd encourage you to look on our website there to see if there's anything that attracts you at the moment. And then at more senior levels, then we have senior appointments all the way up to the top level appointments commission. So we look after all of those. We also do recruitment to professional and technical roles across the local authorities. Different agencies, we run or we contribute to the state board's process to the appointment to agencies. And also, as you can see there, to the HSE clerical officer recruitment, and then for the non-consultant hospital doctors, consultants and all the rest of it. Do some appointments to the education sector and also to justice. So we run the Garda trainee and some other posts within the Garda Síochána more recently. We run recruitment for the prison officers, recruit prison officers, and you can see we run campaigns there for GSOC, for the Garda Commission. So a good breadth of roles encompassed in all that, and typically you'll find out more on the Public Jobs website if you want to dig deeper. So what type of recruitment are aligned with those sorts of positions? Well, there's the specialist roles, which are those sort of professional and technical ones that I spoke of. In those ones, there might only be one position or one vacancy because maybe just the nature of the role. And for those ones, there's a mix of experience and qualifications, or maybe there may be a requirement for professional registration. So really, it'll depend on the nature of the role and the requirements of the particular job. And then there's sort of more generalist roles. And those are maybe to the specific grades, like the clerical officer or the executive officer or the graduate roles that I mentioned earlier. These ones typically are larger volume ones with a larger number of positions. And oftentimes, if you're successful in that process, dependent on where you are, you may be put on what we call a panel or an order of merit, and then you'll be drawn down from that as the vacancies arise. And then sometimes, again, it's all dependent on a particular role. There might be specific educational qualifications required for those. Maybe sometimes they say a good standard of education. So each job will have its own requirements, and those are always detailed in the information booklet that's made available at the time of advertisement. So you can see there then for yourself whether you have the whether you meet the eligibility and sort of previous experience requirements to enable you to apply for the post. So just to give you a little sense of sort of the opportunities for interest on the right hand side of the screen here, just to share with you, I suppose, what's the hierarchy or what are the structures for the general service grades within the civil service. So you have the Sec Gen or the Secretary General at the top, and then you can see reporting into those as you go all the way down. So the clerical officer is obviously the entry level, and then there are promotion routes there as identified. So you can go clerical officer, executive officer, up through HEO and AP and so on. Or if you were interested, or if you were a graduate, there's those administrative officer roles, and there are streams for those as well. So I know advertised at the moment we have administrative officer, and there are some streams for that. I think there's a business and finance one, HR, health, and then there's a general administrative officer post being advertised currently. So again, if you're interested, you'll find more information on publicjobs.ie. Also, if a career in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade is attractive to you, we also have competition open for third secretary in the department, which is a junior diplomat role and post. And there's also a development specialist officer post in there. So again, I'd encourage you to go to the website and you'll find more information on that. The administrative officer and the third secretary posts are advertised currently. They'll probably be closing in the next number of days. So if you are interested, be sure to have a look quite quickly. So then, just to give you a flavour of what you can expect by means of the selection process, what I've indicated here are probably more for the large volume ones, but some of it's applicable to the smaller volume ones as well, or the professional or technical. So our website, publicjobs.ie, is the front of house. So you'll need to go online there and register an account. And once you've registered, then you'll be able to make your applications, all your applications online to the various jobs that you might be interested in. So typically, once you've applied, dependent on the role again, so there may be shortlisting undertaken based on your application form, or dependent again for the large volume general service grades, it's typically ability tests. So there'll be aptitude tests, maybe situational judgment assessment, and oftentimes we might include a self-assessment questionnaire. So that would typically be stage one. And if you're successful at that, and again, dependent on where you might be placed and on the number of vacancies for a particular role, you might be asked to a subsequent stage. So typically that might be a preliminary interview, or it may be an online video where you'd have an opportunity to answer some questions to your camera on your device, and then assessors will look and score that afterwards. Then again, if you're successful there and dependent on the number of vacancies that might be available, you may be called forward to an assessment centre. So typically that might take the shape of a number of different assessments. It might include an analysis exercise, or you might need to do a presentation to an interview board, or there may be a group exercise. And typically that's followed by a main interview. So with the impact of COVID at the moment, all of our selection processes now have moved online. So whether you're completing your situational judgments as part of stage one, or your interviews and exercises part of subsequent stages, they're all done online now. to ensure that we can continue to meet the needs of the departments for staffing. So just to introduce you then, all of our interviews and all of our selection process are designed around the key requirements of the role, around the job. And what you see here is a wheel, and we call this a competency model or a competency framework. And within it, you can get an indication as to the types of skills that people would be expected to demonstrate if they're coming for interview, or if they express an interest in engaging in a selection process. So this information is available online. So you can see here, for example, for a clerical officer, we'd expect good team working skills, being able to manage information well, strong ability to deliver results, and customer service focus. So each of the roles has their own competency areas. And if you are thinking of applying for a role, I suppose a hint and tip might be to look at the competency wheel or the model related to the post that you're going for, and just take some time to reflect on, well, where have I demonstrated experience, or where have I demonstrated my ability in these areas in the past, because those are often the types of questions that you'd be asked during the interview, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on. But I just wanted to show you the competency wheel, just to make you aware that it's there, it's available. Each post will have its own competencies, and they are always listed in the information booklet and subsequent information that will be made available to you when you apply. So again, just as part of your prep there is to stop and reflect, as I say, on your experiences, if there's any gaps, or if you've any experiences that you can share if you're called to interview. So then, next we have, it's timely, I've pulled together some hints and tips here just to prepare you for interview, and then some things to watch out for during the interview as well. So in preparation for the interview, do reflect on your experience, as I've said. Look at the competency wheels, look at your career to date, and where you've demonstrated your key achievements, or where you've made a valuable contribution, because that'll be very important. And just it's important that it's fresh in your mind when you go in for the interview, just so that you can draw on it quickly if you need to. And it's helpful in preparation to document the main tasks associated with your different achievements, the knowledge required, and what you learned. So again, take a bit of time, look at your achievements. What did you do? What specifically did you do, and what were you involved in? What did you learn from it? And is there anything that you might like to do differently, again, based on your experience of having gone through it? Look at the competencies required for the role, and look at maybe the positive and the negative examples. And don't be afraid to speak about things maybe that didn't work out so well, because the important thing is that if you've learned from that, and if you'll do something different again, that's valuable learning to be able to talk about. And then practice articulating your experience and your examples, because oftentimes during the interview, you may be nervous and things mightn't just flow as well for you. So if you've had a practice beforehand, and just talk out your examples and try and be as succinct and to the point as you can, well, then it'll probably come a lot more easier to you during the interview to talk about your skills and examples. And again, do some research on the role that you're applying for, and be able to tie in your experience to date and into how you see it being relevant to the particular role that you're going for. And that will help the interview board to understand maybe your motivation for the role, but also your understanding of the role and what it will entail. So that's always a useful thing to think about as well. So during the interview then, do expect a relatively formal interview. So there'll be, there could be anywhere between sort of 2 or 3 interview board members, maybe 4 or more, dependent on the role. But they'll be following quite a formal and a structured approach. I know you're going to be nervous, and that's always a facet with interviewing, but it's important that you listen to the question. And if you missed it, or if you weren't quite sure what the board member was asking for, don't be afraid to say, sorry, could you rephrase that? Or what in particular would you like me to speak about? So make sure that you're clear on the question so that you can respond to meet the board member's needs. Know that you can't have prepared everything, so it's just impossible. But if you have thought about all your experience, and you've thought about the role, and you've thought about the requirements of the job, you can't go too far wrong. And also, in responding and even in your preparation in advance, just be mindful of the STAR model. And the STAR model means to think about the situation at hand. What was the task, and what was the specific actions that you took? And always speak to your own direct contribution, because that's what the interview boards would be most interested in. And then you can speak of the result. So did it work well? Do you have any metrics that can support how it fared? And did you get any feedback? Or indeed, what did you learn from it that might be relevant to the job at hand, or the job that you're being interviewed for? And as we said already, do expect a challenging interview. And don't be thrown off, if the board members ask questions, or ask, a lot of questions, because, they'll have an agenda to get through themselves in the time available. So they'll be keen to make sure that you're, responding to the questions that are being asked, and being given the best opportunity to demonstrate your skills and your abilities. So then, during the interview, there's a few things to watch out for. So don't upset yourself, and don't kick yourself over something you did or you didn't say earlier in the interview. Like, don't worry about it. Just pick yourself up and, show your best going forward. And again, there's no need to be apologetic for being nervous, because, everybody, or most people anyway, are nervous during an interview. So there's always going to be a glass of water in front of you on the table if you're on site, or just have a glass at hand if you're doing it remotely. And just take a little breath, and a sip of water if you're feeling a little nervous. And again, don't feel that you have to respond to a question straight away immediately. Take a minute, have a think, and then come up with what you feel is your best response. And then, it's always better to speak of what you've done in the past. So try to avoid speaking hypothetically, or this is what you would do, or this is what you might do. If you have experience in the past that lends itself to the question area being explored, well, then it's really good. Well, actually, that happened to me before, and this is what I did, and these were the challenges that I faced. So it's always better to provide evidence from your own experience where you can. And then, I touched on this earlier, don't jump in with an answer without checking your understanding. It's okay to clarify your understanding. It's okay to clarify the question. And again, that's just to make sure that you're being able to deliver to the board the information that they're looking for, to enable them to make an assessment decision at the end. So there's a few little bits in there to think about as you go about your preparation. What we have here then are different handles. So the Public Appointment Service, we have different social media accounts. As you can see here, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So we'd encourage you to keep an eye and to register with those different forums, so that you can keep up to date of developments and movements. And also on the Public Jobs website, there are, even though we mightn't run the competitions for them, there are oftentimes adverts from other wider public sector bodies that might use our website as a vehicle to advertise their posts on. So keep an eye out for other opportunities across the wider sector there as well. So that's sort of it in terms of the formal presentation. So I'm happy to take any questions you may have now. I'm just looking here, there's a couple of questions in the comments box that I'll just have a quick read of now. So how long before the interview should I arrive is a key question. Well, with the interviews being online currently, I suppose it's good that you are familiar with your technology in advance. So are you able to put on your camera? Are you aware of how to use your microphone? Are you in a quiet room where you're not going to be disrupted away from noise and all the rest of it? So that sort of preparation you might do in advance. And then typically in the information on the call to interview, they will tell you maybe to log in maybe five or 10 minutes in advance, just to make sure that all is in order before you'd meet with the interview board. So there'll always be hints and tips provided to you to enable you to best prepare for it. But I'd say online, I'd definitely be sort of logging on probably 10 minutes in advance, just so that there's an opportunity to iron out any issues before you meet with the interview board. But do check your technology and your equipment in advance, and do ensure that you're sort of away from noise and disruption. So another question here from Adrian, and what in your opinion is the section of public jobs that you think will be a growth area in the terms? Wow, well there's really always going to be opportunities across the civil service. I mean, if you think about the nature of the roles, you know, there are so many different departments with so many different responsibilities that there's always going to be requirements for the general and civil service posts. I think if you're looking maybe to our brothers and sisters across in the health sector, there's a lot of sort of new jobs coming to pass there, and some of them are an immediate response to COVID. So I think, you know, unless there's a moratorium called, there's always a need to have panels of people to call from as and when needed. Let me just see here. Excellent, Carol. Thanks for that. Carol felt there were some good tips there that he hadn't considered. It's good to get you thinking, Carol. It's no problem. Anybody else have any questions?
That's great. We'll answer those as they come up. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. Kind of fly through what it is you do, what publicjobs.ie and what's on offer there. There's a couple of things. The competency wheel that you showed us, will that all of those competencies will be clear on the job spec?
They are. So for each job, when you apply for it, there's always what we call a candidate information booklet. And in that details an overview of, I suppose, the role. It's like a little role profile or job description, and in that it'll describe for you what are the eligibility requirements, that you know, that'll detail the requirements to be able to work effectively in the role, and it'll also detail an overview of the selection process, and it'll also detail the competencies. And then as you're called through each stage of the process, we give you familiarisation material in advance of each stage so that you know exactly what competencies are being assessed or what the process will be. And it's amazing actually the amount of people that don't read through the familiarisation material. We would strongly encourage you to read through it. And you know, oftentimes there's practice examples if you're doing aptitude tests or if you're doing different sorts of assessments and exercises. There's always practice materials available for you. So we would strongly encourage you to engage with those so that you're familiar with them in advance of doing the assessment live. It's really worthwhile doing that, and I'd strongly encourage you to do that.
All right, thanks for that. Also, kind of, you suggested a couple of things that we shouldn't do, but I'm just wondering, like, what other bad habits have you seen from candidates, or where do you think people kind of fall down on a regular basis, other than obviously you just meant not even reading their candidate information brochure?
Yes, I think, you know, when people haven't really considered their opportunities and their strengths and their weaknesses in advance, it can really come across to the interview board that, you know, you know, they're not demonstrating the evidence, and whereas if they had put a little bit of thought into it in advance, and if they thought about their different experiences and how those experiences might map onto the requirements of the job, and if they were able to talk to the interview board and tell them, well, I worked here, you know, for this amount of time, and I was directly responsible for this piece of work, and within that I did X, Y, and Z, and this was the outcome. Like, that's much more, it's stronger evidence for them to go on. Also, also watch out for what we call the royal we's, and sometimes it can be a cultural thing, but try not to say we did this, we did that, we did the other. Say, direct your evidence to what you were directly involved in and what you did. So I did this, I did that, I was responsible for the other, and that's just more helpful to the board, because they will chase you on it if you're not speaking to your own direct contribution.
Now, I don't know if this is the right way to think about it, but when obviously I get to see a lot of kind of public jobs information. A lot of it come through here. We discuss it with people who are applying for them, or might help kind of coach people. My feeling, and I'm not sure if it's completely correct, is that the jobs that are often the jobs that are listed don't directly correlate with a job in the kind of private sector or the corporate world. So that there tends to be a lot of opportunity to kind of have transferable skills. And I think that's sometimes something that people struggle with. Do you have any advice about kind of thinking through that idea of how you'd pitch? So you talked about kind of talking about your strengths and weaknesses. How would you start to talk about transferable skills? So I've done this role in industry, and here's things I've done, but how do they start to think about that in the public sector?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good question, because we sort of have our own titles for jobs, and we have our own, and some of them aren't very intuitive. I think we'd be the first to say. So, executive officer, what does that mean? Well, the executive officer post is sort of the first line manager post. So, if you can demonstrate there that you've managed teams in any capacity, or your ability to plan and organize and to deliver results, if you've experience of that in the private sector, or in any context really, whether it's doing voluntary work, or whether it was projects that you might have been involved in college, whatever way you can best demonstrate your skills, well then it's really about understanding the job that you're applying for, so that you have the knowledge and the context to be able to paint the picture for the interview board. Well, this is how this skill relates to that particular role. So, if you're going for a senior leadership role, again, you'd want to be able to demonstrate that, you had a significant impact, maybe managing a large budget or large multidisciplinary teams, or whatever the case may be. But it's about really, I suppose, taking the time to understand the nature of the role that you're applying for, and then saying, okay, so this is what they're looking for. Where in my experience to date have I been able to demonstrate that? And what I'd also, just while I think of it, I'd also encourage you to think of a couple of different examples. So if you have the competency wheel and you know what's been asked for, think about a couple of examples, because sometimes the boards might say, oh, thank you for that. Have you another example of where you demonstrated that skill? So again, just so that you're prepared in advance, have thought about a couple of examples so that you can draw from those if you're asked.
Right. Yeah, it definitely feels like it's, and actually, just when you talk about kind of job titles, like everywhere seems to make up their own job titles, for whatever they feel like, just because it's like, oh, we need a new job title for for a receptionist. Okay, well that's chief experience officer, for
yes,
in the vestibule.
Yes, yeah.
Or whatever it might be, and a job that I do here at Job Care, might be called something else, elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Because I'm aware, I'm a job club leader, but I'm a training, I'm a learning and development manager.
Yes, that's it. And that's why, it is important to take the time and to look. And there are there's career portals as well that you can delve deeper and get more information on the roles, so that you can get a better understanding of them. And then you'll be able to think, this is what they're getting at, and this is how my skills and experience will map onto that. So that's,
I love that. And Anne's just said maybe there's a job creating job titles. What we actually need is we need a Google search engine to go, chief engagement officer equals this in this role, and this and this role, and this, and and it's paid
absolutely.
300K if you work for Google, but it's paid 30K if you work for Tesco, or whatever.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah. But we'd all become a terribly homogenous bunch then, so we would rolling. So it's
Absolutely.
nice to keep it interesting.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks,
Yeah.
Anne, for the laugh. That's great.
That's it.
Yeah.
So does anyone else have any questions or reflections at this stage?
Yeah. Nothing else is popping up right away. So kind of do you have a vague or a kind of gross general number of kind of how many kind of candidates and how many roles and then how many candidates would go through kind of public jobs annually?
Oh wow. Well, like there'd be literally many thousands
Mm,
annually. For clerical officer roles, like again, and it can be dependent on the economy. Like we've had,
mm,
over the years we'd have had up to maybe 30,000 applications for
okay.
clerical officer
Mm,
posts. And then it can really vary. Like for the smaller volume ones, there'd be probably because of the nature of the role or the specifics of the skills that are required. Take hospital consultants, for example, you wouldn't always have a huge applicant pool for that.
sure.
But then, for the general service grades, the general service grades are probably the ones that have the most vacancies.
Mhm.
So, you'd be talking thousands anyway. But again,
Wow. Okay.
that can be a feature of the economy as well. If things are booming and if there's lots of jobs available out there, there might be the same volume of applicants as if things are getting tighter and
Sure.
people are looking for opportunities. But that's why we have that staged process for the larger volume ones. It's just to help us to fairly and effectively manage the large numbers to bring them through. And again, that's to meet vacancy needs. So where the demands are, people will be called forward maybe quicker or more people called forward. So it very much depends on what the requirement is from the departments.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a great question there from Amy as well. And before we get to it, if anyone else has any questions, please fire them up, and we'll try to get to them before we wrap up. So Amy asks, what sort of questions would you recommend we prepare in advance to ask the interviewer? And I always prepare. I always was always told interviews as much about finding out them as vice versa. I love this, Amy, because like I personally think one of the most important questions you get asked is, what questions have you got for us? Like I really think you can nail your interview on that question, and certainly feel like I've done that in the past. So just over to you then.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it might be different with other organizations, but sort of at the end of our interviews, usually candidates might be invited. Is there anything you'd like to tell us at the end? So it'll be just, maybe you forgot to mention something about one of your examples earlier and you just want it had just come to you now, so you wanted to let them know about that. So really, there isn't an opportunity to ask interview
Okay.
boards about the job in the context of our interviews. Now, as I say, maybe different organizations might do things differently. But usually, sometimes like I've heard questions, they might ask, well, when will I hear about my results, or what, that sort of thing. When will we get notification? But really, if you are asked, is there anything you'd like to add at the end? If there is something, if you have a burning piece of information that you really want the board to know about you that you haven't covered already as part of the question and answer piece, then that's an opportunity to share that there and then. So it might be a thing to think about, when as your preparation to go in. Okay, I have this experience and I know this is how that translates onto the job. So by the time I come out of the interview, I would like the interview board to know X, Y, and Z about me. And then you can think at the end of the interview, well, have I had an opportunity to tell them all these things? And if you hadn't through the Q&A piece, then you can just tell them there at the end.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, it's helpful. It's helpful to know that that's not necessarily a question you're going to get asked in those roles.
No, not in the
Hmm.
civil service interviews
It'd
anyway. But
be
as I say,
very, very common outside the civil service.
yes, yeah.
And I think there's something. I think we'll answer Adrian's question. He's asking, what's the typical time for entry roles? He says that here it can be months, but has that changed?
Yeah, as I say, Adrian, it can very much depend on the demand. So, usually how it works is that the various departments would engage in workforce planning. They'd notify us in the public appointment service what their need is for the different roles, and it's on the back of that then that we ensure that we have panels in situ so that we can pull people from those panels to appoint them in a timely manner. So often it'll depend on where you are in the panel. So obviously if there's a lot of vacancies and you're higher up on the order of merit, well then you get called quicker than if there wasn't as many vacancies and you were lower down on the order of merit, for example. So it's hard to answer that one. Sometimes it can take, if it's a 3 or a 4 staged selection process, it can take a bit of time to work through all that with candidates and get them through the different stages. So it's really a hard question to answer. Sometimes it may indeed be months, as I say, dependent on the need and where someone might be positioned on the order of merit.
That's great. There's no kind of there's a couple of pointers there, but there's no other questions coming in. I'd love to wrap it up there. And Michelle, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been really insightful to hear about that and to get a chance to kind of get a peek inside that process for you. So much appreciated. And thanks for your time.
Not at all. I enjoyed it. Yeah, that's delighted to be here. And I would strongly encourage you to have a look at the Public Jobs website and to register on it if you haven't already. And then you can, as I say, get alerts to posts that you might be particularly interested in. You can get alerts for when they're advertised, which is always useful.
Oh, let's go to Michelle. Sean has a specific question here, and he says that he applied for a cleric officer on the health department, and he got over 3,000 results. Any indication on how long it would take for them to get back to him?
I'm afraid, Sean, I don't. Is the long and the short of that?
I'd say they're swamped.
Yes, I'd say, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, Sean. If you have an email address to the particular team that you was involved in managing the campaign, they might be able to give you a little bit of insight on it, but I wouldn't have those sort of specifics at hand today, I'm afraid.
That's brilliant. Anyway, there's thanks there from Jorge, from May, from Adrian, from Elaine. They're all kind of popping up just to say thank you. So much appreciated. We really value your time and your contribution to Jobnet this morning. So thanks very much. And
not at all. And I wish you all luck in your future careers in finding fabulous jobs wherever they are, but hopefully in the civil service.
Oh, that's great. Hang on there, and I'll just wrap this up. So that's the end of our presentation this morning, and we'll be back with you tomorrow in our small groups. We'll have a chance to kind of work through a little bit of the STAR technique. So, as Michelle mentioned, the situation, what was the task you were kind of actioned with, what action you took, and what were the results that you took away, or what did you learn from it? So we'll spend a bit of time digging into that tomorrow. Have a great Monday. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Thanks for joining Jobcare.